kind of where we left off on our first cast too, as well, getting into objective morality,
Oh, and
natural
more
law.
importantly, I have to ask you, how did you become an anarchist?
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, best question ever. Man, that's like a really long trek back though, but I think it was realizing paying taxes was a scam, and then just kind of like, wow, we get robbed like half of our money, and then our money's worth less and less like every year, and the cost of living goes up. And then it's like all central banks that are causing this, and the Federal Reserve, and then you kind of go down there, and then you're like, well, there's a scam here. They lie to us about this, and then you kind of just peel back the layers even more, and like, wow, there's more smoke, there's more fire over here. I think Ron Paul brought a lot of things from the shadows as well, like the wars and everything are all based on lies. Um, I mean, half of the news is a scam. Then you just start getting into it, like, man, yeah, they've lied to us about one thing, and then it's like basically everything they've lied to us about. And they start even at a very young age too, which we were getting into on the educational system here. And then you think back, like, man, maybe basically everything we learned in school was a lie. Like, I mean, any uh, any intellectual default I have, I can just blame on going to government school. Yeah, people will listen to this and say we need more government school, I'm sure. But anyway, we were looking at the educational system, and starting from age 0 to 7, we know that we're basically a sponge. At that age, in our theta brain waves, we're basically absorbing everything, our entire environment, everything that we hear is basically learned. Some of our deepest subconscious beliefs are ingrained in us at these early ages. And the schools want us even earlier now. So
Yeah, with
from this young
universal
age,
pre-K.
yeah, exactly. So from such a young age, I mean, we're learning this patriotic, praying to the flag very early. We're learning to defer to authority, listen to our leaders, listen to the experts, don't really think too hard, except memorize things and regurgitate things. Take your standardized test that you memorized the answers to. Hopefully, you memorized enough of them so you passed.
Yeah, it's all
And
about just how many dates can you memorize, how many things can you regurgitate from your textbook.
right, I mean, there's so many memes about, I learned the Pythagorean theorem, but, didn't learn anything about money or credit or anything.
Or fiat
And
currency,
right,
or
and
debt-based
yeah, of
system.
course they're not gonna. Yeah, of course they won't teach us that. But I mean, they don't even teach taxes. I didn't even learn. I think you were saying you learned how to balance a checkbook. I'm pretty sure we never even looked at that.
That's because I didn't want to take. Oh, what is that other call? That other. It's either personal finances or, the one where you learn to sew and all that stuff. Which there's
Oh,
nothing wrong with it. I just didn't feel like doing that at school.
right. No, I totally understand. And not that it's 100% like all bad, or not that teachers are bad. I'm sure somebody will interpret that out there. Not like that. I mean, a lot of what they teach though is just they're regurgitating as well state curriculum, which we
Oh,
can look more at.
yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, from a young age, yeah, we're just learning, all kinds of state propaganda essentially, and yeah, our parents teach us that as well because our parents are coming from the same propagandized systems, really, education, public education, and state media.
And another interesting thing about it is, regardless of where, the parent may have landed on the educational spectrum, everyone tries to hammer into the kid's head, you got to go to school and study so you can get good grades and get a good job with a good paying salary and all of this. Because it's always like, well, I didn't do good enough in school, so that's why my life is shit. So you have to do better in school, so your life isn't shit. And we're like, well, maybe your life is shit because you listened to school. And I know that's a bold statement. I'm not saying like, school, it doesn't teach literacy and basic math and such like that. Like, that's very good to know. Absolutely. But my main question is, number one, should it be mandated by the state? Should the state make your child go to school under threat of basically violence, punishing you, sending you to jail as the parent or whatever? But
No.
even as a parent, you are the legal guardian, which just means you're, the custodian or whatever. You're watching the child for the state. You're not actually you don't actually have ownership or have rights over your child, which is
Well, if they can
wrong.
threaten punishment of any sort, then they're basically saying, yeah, we own the children. If they can punish you for not going to school. But I mean, yeah, again, all the homeschooled kids we were saying are miles ahead of the public educated, government indoctrinated kids.
Absolutely. Well, that's the second question on, okay, so should they make them get an education of any kind? And then on top of that, should that education be provided by the state? Should that be written by the state? Why should the state be the one to tell your kids what they should or should not learn?
Yeah, I mean that's our standardized education model, which a lot of this started in the early 1900s. I mean, it goes back centuries even, but I think most relevant to us now is looking at John D. Rockefeller in the early 1900s, who created the General Education Board and basically wanted good workers. He is quoted saying, "I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers." It was really about factory workers in particular. But yeah, we go to school, we start to learn the 9 to 5 life already, get our breaks and lunch, and really just inundate in that 40-hour work week. Don't think outside the box, don't engage our right side of the brain. It's all left brain analytical, and not even analytical as much anymore. It's just standardized common core, memorize and regurgitate. No creativity engaged, no real critical thinking or greater levels of thought going on, just more of a standardized bureaucratic mess, really. It sounds like more and more so.
And let's talk about the money for a second here, okay? I would be willing to bet that the rich elites, again, whoever, whatever name you want to put on these people, the powers that be, the rulers, the people behind the curtain, whatever, they're not putting this money out of the kindness of their heart. They're just not. They want something out of it. So, starting in 1902, John D. Rockefeller creates, like you were saying, the General Education Board at the ultimate cost of $129 million. That's in 1902. That's a whole, I don't know what the conversion
Oh
rate
my
would
God,
be
that's
there,
like
but that's
$1 billion now. Yeah.
stupid amount of money now, okay? So let's go back to 1946. The Rockefeller Foundation grants the Education Board, here we go, $7.5 billion. That's billion with a B. And that's, again, 1946. That's a whole load of money back. It's a whole load of money now. Back then, that's even, again, not sure the conversion rate, but hey, that's a lot of money right there. And that's just by the Rockefeller Foundation. I know it says in here the Carnegie Foundation was also involved, and also there were let's see, the National Education Association was pretty alarmed by what the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Foundation was trying to do to the national education system, saying that it's basically going against our Constitution. Let's see, 1953, the Reese Committee of the United States House of Representatives quoted Norman Dodd, director of research for that committee. It seemed incredible that the trustees of typical American fortune created foundations, talking about the General Education Board and others that the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation funded, should have permitted them to be used to finance ideas and practices incompatible with the fundamental concepts of our Constitution. Yet there seems evidence that this may have occurred. So right back in 1953, they're already seeing that, hold on a second, these very wealthy families and the institutions that they have built are trying to infiltrate our education system and going against the Constitution. And that goes back to the question, do you want the state to be in control of what your children are learning?
Yeah, or these big globalist type of dudes here as well that you don't even hear about. I mean, these are like the richest people, richest families, and their names are usually scrubbed from the books for the most part, even though they've been creating a lot of this. And it's like, can you even call it public education as much when it's, these Rockefeller types that are putting billions and billions in it? Somebody might say, well, that's just private education or capitalism, but it's still a state curriculum, though. It's all coming down Common Core. I mean,
well, I think maybe that's the problem with it. It's being put across as like, oh, this is the public education system. This is meant for the greater good, for the the good of the public. When it's not, that is a lie. It is for the good of these elites or incredibly rich people that are influencing it or that are paying for it. That is what it's for. But I would imagine if you actually told people that like, hey, if you go to our schools, this is so you can just become a real great employee and never actually, like make anything for yourself necessarily. That's not really a big selling point. You know what I mean? So I think that's the big moral problem here is they're really not telling the truth on what these institutions are actually put there for. And it's put there under the guise of, oh, this is public education, put together, implying, like an impartial board, if you will, that made this where it's not impartial at all.
No, I mean, it's really just about fitting into the mold. I mean, if you're outside the mold, then you need medication. I mean, it's learning the concepts of authority and instilling supposed discipline in you. And sometimes, there's good things you can learn in school, of course. Yeah, we're not saying that, but a lot of this is, I mean, basically indoctrination. Jordan Maxwell said graduation stands for gradually indoctrinated, graduated. But I mean, yeah, it's really about just learning the factory life. I mean, a lot of this is outdated. I mean, you don't learn to really think for yourself. You don't learn to start a business, how to avoid taxes. You might learn how to pay taxes. You should learn how to avoid taxes.
Yes.
Of course, they wouldn't teach you that. But yeah, you don't learn any real business skills. It's all employment skills, if anything. And if you even get that, you might get some good college education in like the STEM fields, But as far as the K through 12, I mean, in 12 years, again, yeah, you should learn a good 3 to 4 trades in that amount of time.
Absolutely.
And we've seen homeschooled kids. I've seen homeschooled kids that get twice as much done. I mean, trigonometry and elementary years type of thing.
Well, and the reason that is the homeschooled kids get to go more at their own pace because of the way the system is set up now with the standardized tests and the different grade. You just have to test out of the grade, and that's it. You just got to show that what was supposed to be covered that year. So by not being in the public education system and having to, because I don't mean any disrespect to anyone's children or anything by saying this, but honestly, it's basically the class is going as fast as the slowest kid. And even then, let's even back up a little bit from there. A lot of what happens in the classroom these days is busy work. Even my dad was an educator for his career, And he honestly did not believe in homework. And every school that he went to and built, the test scores would get higher and higher and higher every year. He knew what he was doing, but he did not like homework. He said, we have these kids for 8 hours. If we can't teach them what we need to in 8 hours, then we're not doing our jobs right.
Yeah, it sounds
And
like a way better teacher. Like, why would you want to spend 8 hours and then go home and do homework? Like that
right, right, it
sounds
doesn't make
awful.
any sense. And especially because in these textbooks and these scripts that they write for the teachers, there's built-in busy work to where if you just scrapped all the busy work and you're like, okay, everybody, get out your books, we're going to go through these problems. And you just start working through, have one kid come up, like, you're going to do this problem. Now you get your ass up there. You're going to do this problem. And you just go through, you're going to learn so much more, so much more. And right now, I'd like to say a long time ago, I came across this YouTube channel. It's called Khan Academy. It's also a website, but it's this guy that puts up all of these videos. It teaches everything from like basic math all the way through quantum mechanics, but he's all about the mastery of the material. And that's honestly the big failure in the education system these days is you should not be moving on if you have not gotten 100% on whatever like a math test, for instance, right? Because if you're moving, if you got like an 80%, a 70%, whatever, you're moving on. Like you're missing a core concept, and particularly in math, if you miss a particular concept like that, they build on those concepts. So what this con guy proposes is anyone that says like, oh, like I was never good at math or I never got it, at a certain point it just lost me. It's because at a certain point along the road, that 20% that you missed, that 30% that you missed, whatever it is, even that 5% that you missed, at a certain point, whatever concept that one is going to come back and bite you in the ass. So you should not be moving on from a topic until you have mastered that topic. And that makes a lot of sense. But you can't do that when you've got 30, 40 kids in a classroom with one teacher and you've got this standardized book. That's why it's like, oh, well, we got this range of grades and well, tough shit. You missed it. Well, we can't stay back with you. We have to move on. No, that's not right. It doesn't work that way. And again, it's like we were saying, the whole just memorization thing. That's what it's all. It's not actually about educating your children. It's how much can they retain, and that's what that percentage really is on the grades. It's like how good are you at memorizing shit off like out of in a minimal amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a point with Khan Academy too. Yeah, I didn't really think of that. But yeah, good point. I mean, missing things like that, getting 70, 80% of it, you're not going to be able to build on later on. But I mean, from what I remember of Khan Academy, that's even like a free education source, or at least very
100%.
heavily. Yeah, that's awesome, right? So yeah, anyone that wants free education, no plug. But I mean, that sounds like a better deal than going and paying arm and an ass at
Oh yeah,
a
especially
university.
now that all the kids have to be sent home because the covfefe. I mean, they're already on the computer anyway. If they're having problems or whatever, or even just to supplement to get them ahead, pop over to khanacademy.com. Especially if you go to the website, they actually have, you can sign in. They've got trackers on like what you've done. It's basically a curriculum online right there. It's really good stuff. Again, no association, but it's an awesome site. Check it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 100 different ways to do that even nowadays, and look at your own subjects at your own pace. But yeah, as far as the K through 12, I mean, there's a lot of improvements that could be done. But I mean, this is so deeply embedded from, I mean, this goes centuries back, but I mean, from the early 1900s, Rockefellers. I've heard what were you saying? Gates is more involved in the Common Core now as well.
Yeah, Bill Gates is involved in the Common Core education. I can try and look that up real quick if you want to keep rolling.
Yeah, I mean, so basically all of this is just to make good workers. I mean, you learn the real stuff kind of searching for yourself. I mean, a lot of this we learned even in like the rich dad, poor dad classes, you find a lot of valuable stuff in there. I mean, 2, 3 days of like a real estate course in there is like a whole semester of college shoved into 3 days. Uh,
Oh yeah,
but
just
yeah,
a crash course on uh,
yeah, they
the
told us about a lot
modern
of this.
economic system.
Yeah, I mean, things you're not going to learn in public school whatsoever. And yeah, truancy, I'm stuck on this page too. Yeah, so you can really be prosecuted for not taking your child to the government school.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or has showing some sort of homeschooling, and that's the thing is like the homeschooling deals. It has to be an approved quote unquote homeschooling program. Now, as far as I know, there are programs. I don't know any names particularly, but I mean it's pretty lax. You know what I'm saying? You can you can go at your own pace. Like they just cross the T's and dot the I's that need to be done. Just do your research, like always. Do your own research.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, homeschooled kids do get further ahead for sure. I mean, there's the whole social aspect, but that's why you've got sports, other clubs. And we're not saying everyone should just go homeschool their kids too, but I think the point of this is, I mean, parents really need to be mostly involved. Like,
Yeah.
and education doesn't just end with school. I think it was Albert Einstein that said that your education is really dependent on yourself, or it doesn't end with school whatsoever.
So I just found something. This is on thefederalist.com. The headline is Bill Gates tactfully admits his Common Core experiment was a failure. And it goes through talking about how, here's a quote from him, based on everything we've learned in the past 17 years, we are evolving our education strategy. That's what he wrote in a blog before he gave a speech in Cleveland. And this was written in October of 2017. He says, if there is one thing I've learned, it is that no matter how enthusiastic we might be about one approach or another, the decision to go from pilot to wide-scale usage is ultimately and always something that has to be decided by you and others in the field. Let's see, if this statement encompasses his Common Core debacle, Gates could have at least the humility to recall that Common Core had no pilot before he took it national. There wasn't even a draft available to the public before the Obama administration hooked states into contracts, which many of were ghost-written with Gates' funds, pledged that they'd buy that pig in a poke. So, yeah. It sounds like he's indirectly, and obviously this article seems a bit biased towards Bill Gates, which, how can you not be? I get it. But
Right, yeah, I mean, he thinks he owns the world now,
yeah.
apparently. And he's
Again, just look, we're just kind of touching on this. If either way, just go look into it. Just do your own research and see who actually came up with this, what your kids are actually learning. Because that's, like you just said, the parents need to be more involved with their child's education. There is way too much trust in the state, and there's very little oversight on what's actually going on. Because something that I have heard, and again, I don't have children, so I don't know this for a fact, but what I've heard anecdotally from other people are, kids come home and they're like, oh, hey, I learned such and such in school today. And it may go against what the parents learned in school, but a lot of times the parents will just be like, oh, well, like they must have, got some new evidence or something. So, oh, I'm not in school. I haven't been in school for so long. The kid knows. So my point is by doing that, the kids are backdooring the indoctrination, the new propaganda to the parents, because the parents are so uninvolved in their children's education because they're so involved in what's going on and they're paying bills and the debt-based system and all this and that. Like they because the states got it or whatever, they're going to school, they don't give it a second thought, which is a major problem.
Yeah, a lot of them will just listen to what the kids are saying back
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, you're in school. You're smarter than I am. Stay in school, get good grades so you can get a good job with a good starting salary.
Yeah, and I mean, what kind of parenting is that really too? I mean, the parents should be most involved in the education system, but I think there is a laziness factor there too, where it's kind of like, oh, we'll just drop you off at the babysitter there for a while, and yeah, like you said, we'll go to our own drudgery and pay the
Right.
bills,
And that's
watch
why
some TV.
charter schools and private schools can be, not always, but they can be a better option depending on the type of charter school. Because some charter schools are chartered like from a university. A local university will pay to have to or fund this school to, you know, get people smart enough to get into their institution, I guess. Or on the other hand, some other charter schools, maybe a bunch of parents will get together and hire a few teachers and educators and start the school that way. It just kind of depends on your local jurisdiction and how they set that up.
Not
But
bad.
my point is there should be many more small like homeschooling alliances in a way, because obviously not everyone can stay home and homeschool their kids. I totally get that. It's not what we're trying to say, and don't feel bad if you can't, because we're all in this shit together, and that's just we were born at this time, so we're having to deal with this. But there are some of us that could potentially stay home and maybe get together with several, 4 or 5 other parents or whatever, and teach those 10 or 15 kids or whatever. You know what I mean? Like there is a way for a smaller community to get together. It's become far too centralized for people to even think that that's possible. Oh, how could I start a school? Well, you're not starting a school. It's not that, especially like elementary school. You're telling me like you can't teach a fucking 7-year-old some addition and division. You know what I'm saying? Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no telling what they actually learn now. What were you talking about? A waiver or something where because of the COVID's
Oh yeah,
1984.
with some jurisdictions are requiring parents to sign waivers saying they won't eavesdrop on the class going on, so they won't hear how the teacher is teaching the kids, that is so wrong. You're a parent, you're allegedly, you're paying taxes, which is allegedly going to the school. That's fun. So you're paying for the school under this whole, you know, dog and pony show that we have in America right now. You're saying that like that's how it works. I pay for, so you own it. You're funding it with your tax dollars. Shouldn't you be able to just walk the fuck in there and just sit down in your kids' class and be like, I want to see what this teacher is doing. I want to see how they're teaching my kid. Audit the teacher. Why can't you do that? I don't get it.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, and the biggest problem is just the deference to authority that we learn. I mean, we just learn to be a good factory worker. I don't know if we quoted John D. Rockefeller on this one, but yeah, he wants a nation of thinkers, not a nation of thinkers, but a nation of workers. So yeah, everything is designed to just fit the mold, or else get on the ADHD medicine.
Right. Here, this
Yeah.
Frederick T. Gates in 1913, which he was the assistant director of the Rockefeller Foundation, I believe it was, director of charity. I'm sorry, for the Rockefeller Foundation. Wrote, "In our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. The present educational conventions fade from our minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own good will upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or of science. We are not to raise up among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians. Nor will we cherish even the humbler ambition to raise up from among them lawyers, doctors, preachers, statesmen, of whom we now have ample supply." So right there, they want to mold us to think the way that they want us to think and not become these philosophers or men of learning or science. What it sounds like to me, to put it plainly, is truth seekers. They don't want truth seekers
Yeah, or critical thinkers,
at
or
all.
when knowing the trivium process, which shout out to Mark Passio there, looking to more of that trivium process. We'll get into more of that maybe in
Absolutely.
future shows, but yeah, absolutely. Just to fit the mold, no real business skills, no real life skills. I mean, yeah, there's all the memes about learning the Pythagorean theorem, but not learning a single thing about credit that, I mean, not that the money is exactly real, you know, fiat based money supply is what we're working with, but I mean, we don't learn really much besides, deferring to the state, defer to authority. We learn state-based history. History just means his story, really. I mean, we learn Christopher Columbus discovered America, which we know isn't true. So who
Yeah,
knows? I mean,
let's just a quick little excerpt there. Okay, thinking about just school and what they teach. When early on in elementary school, at least what I remember, is they taught the whole story of, Christopher Columbus coming over, and then basically this like having some peace with the Indians, and then there's like the Pilgrims with the Thanksgiving, and like it's all this happy-go-lucky, like yay, we're all getting along. But then at some point, I can't remember when exactly it was, but I'm pretty sure some point in like middle school where they actually teach not even the full story, that it's just straight genocide, but a little more like, oh, well, there was a little bit of conflict going on there, like it wasn't really all hunky-dory like that. It's like, well, okay, why are you lying? Because that's what they're doing. You're lying to a child. But that's no fib. That's not like a partial truth. That's a straight lie. It didn't happen. This whole happy-go-lucky story that you learn as a young child. It's like Santa Claus. Like, well, come on now. Why are you doing? Why are you teaching this to be like total fact all the way through? So that's a problem. That's just the first way. One of the first things that I noticed personally on how. Why? Okay, so if they're lying about that, then who's to say they're not lying about something else now? They
oh
being
yeah,
the
of course,
educational system in this aspect.
of course, yeah. There can be all sorts of state-based agendas in there, and state-based science. I mean, big fan of science, not the state-based science, which is a lot of that in public schools, of course, now. I mean, I remember learning fascism bad, Nazis bad. Yeah, of course, I'd agree there, but nothing about the communists as much. I mean, which has about 100, 200 million more dead bodies
Yeah, the
last time.
communists didn't become bad till like I think it was maybe like the 70s and the 80s when it was like maybe the 60s too. The whole communist scare, Cold War thing, all the spies. But even then, that was just the boogeyman that was needed at the time, because at that point, if you called somebody a communist, their house might just get raided and they might just disappear there in the middle of the night because they're a communist, and we can't have those dirty communists. Which, again,
No,
I don't
no,
want any dirty communists here either, but that doesn't give the state the right to come and kidnap them.
true, big facts there. But I mean, why would the public school system speak against the state when they're very reliant on the state? I mean, they're always going to want more tax dollars whenever possible. They're always going to want
Well,
more funding.
I think that's exactly why, is because they want to use this education system so then you believe everything that the state says. Because it seems that they had, maybe they had a plan, maybe they didn't, but in 2012 or 2013, there was an executive order, or what was it? The National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, that made it legal essentially for the state to use propaganda against the public. The amendment basically neutralizes the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 and the Foreign Relations Authorization Act of 1987, and strikes the current ban on domestic dissemination of propaganda material produced by the State Department and the Independent Broadcasting Board of Governors. Um, there's, I mean, you if you want, you can go through that whole 600 and some odd pages. What I did, I used a search, kind of the find on the PDF to find certain keywords and such in it, but there's a lot of stuff buried in there on top of this. But this is a big one because if you have been taught through these 12 years or so of indoctrination to believe authority, which is the state, and then the state can then basically use propaganda, which, let's get real, that means lie to you. The state can lie to you in order to influence your decision making or your thoughts on a particular subject. That's a dangerous thing. That is a dangerous thing. Because you're
Yes.
not given, especially when it comes to natural law, because you're not actually given the full picture there. You're not given all of the information in order to actually, so you're kind of tricked into making a decision because you have been
Yeah.
indoctrinated all this time.
Well, yeah,
But
you by default think your rights and privileges just come from the state or from authority,
right.
or from other men, when no, you're inherently born with certain rights. And all rights. I mean, whatever's not harming another human being, which we touched on last time. But yeah, back to the point. I mean, yeah, a lot of that is just molding us to defer to authority, to defer to the 9 to 5 good slave, good obedient workers, like George Carlin said.
Yeah. There's a club and
When,
you ain't in it.
right. But yeah, I mean, education doesn't stop at school. Too. The point, I think, is more responsible parenting, and then sentient, conscious adults really peeling back the layers and cross verifying everything they've been told, reading into their own history. Look at the counter arguments of the state. Uh, yeah, once you realize the state, everything they have is stolen or taken coercively through taxation, and then everything else they say is basically a lie. I mean, they might mix in the truths on the media sometimes. The little stuff is usually true, but ultimately there's bigger agendas that are military industrial complex or pharmaceutical companies more so now. But yeah, I think the responsibility of self-education is more important than ever.
Oh, absolutely. Because even there another problem, I guess, that I see with people getting information and disseminating that information is there's a this illusion, if you excuse me, illusion of choice, because it seems like all these different channels and all these different companies that you can get your information from, whether it be CNN, ABC, Fox, all this, that, and the other. But really, all of these companies, like many of these, I believe it's 90% of them are all owned by 6 corporations.
I think it's down to 5 last time I checked, but
See,
yeah, that's
which I looked into this a little bit, and it has changed a little bit, because it used to be Comcast, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. But now it looks like CBS and Viacom either merged, or maybe this National Amusements bought all of it, because now under National Amusements you've got all of this CBS, BET is on there, MTV, all those, Paramount Pictures, Nickelodeon, Showtime, CW, Viacom. Yeah, Viacom's under there. And then they added Sony to it, but Sony is like so super tiny as far like the annual. Oh, hold on, I don't have that on there. Okay, there it is. So yeah, Comcast, the total value of Comcast is 148.2 billion. Next is Disney at 88.1 billion. Then you've got Time Warner at 60.6 billion, News Corp at 57 billion, National Amusements at 43 billion, and then Sony is at 34 billion. So all these are billion. If I said million, I'm not sure, but that's all in billions. But anyway, like I said, you've got National Amusements, which has got all CBS, MTV, Nickelodeon, um, Showtime, CW, VH1, all those. They got CBS Games. Uh, they got a couple of like, what is that, pocket books or something? No major prints. It looks like super major. And then so Disney, not only obviously everything that you would know as Disney, which includes all of the Marvel now, the Lucasfilm, but they also own ESPN, ABC, A&E, uh, History Channel. Oh, that's look at that. Disney owns History Channel. I didn't know that.
I think they're with Fox News as well. I believe
Fox.
History, Fox, and Disney all come from the same place, if I'm
Oh,
correct.
Vice is on there. Uh, let's see. Then we got Time Warner, which is CNN, HBO, Cartoon Network. They're also a co-owner in CW. They've got Hulu, Warner Brothers, obviously Time Warner. New Line Cinema is under there. They also own Life, Time Magazine, DC. Um, let's see, they own Rocksteady Games, Warner Brother Games, Monolith Games, obviously Time Warner Cable, the internet company, and then Comcast got NBC, CNBC, Big Idea. Oh, no kidding. That the whole VeggieTales Big Idea that's owned by Comcast. NBC, like I said, NHL Network, Sci-Fi, Universal Pictures is owned by them. Obviously, Comcast or Xfinity Internet. They have a whole slew of ventures going on. Looks like a bunch of Viacom or telecom type of stuff going on. And then no, News Corp is the ones that's got Fox. That's the Murdoch
Okay.
company, Rupert Murdoch. News Corp's got Fox, Nat Geo, Sun, Cult. Let's see, print. They've got Financial News, Bronx Times, Time Ledger, Brooklyn Paper, and then Sony. Which again, I'm really not sure why Sony is on here. I guess they own TriStar, all the other Sony deals, but that's not one of the main ones that I would think about in here. But anyway, these 5 to 6 companies own 90% of where everyone is getting their information from, including it. They own entertainment as well as news. So there's got to be some sort of a conflict of interest or
Yeah, and
something.
think about how, in merging those two together, think about how the typical day goes from a student or a modern day middle class worker. You know, you're engaged in this system all day, be it work or school. You're engaged in just left brain activity all day, no use of creative or real intellect, no intuitive sort of thinking, just all left brain. And then coming home and then come back to one of these five media companies that are just bam, 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 hit you on the right side of the brain instead. And so it's, man, that's just a war zone of propaganda all throughout the day.
Oh yeah,
That's
and
what
just
I
the
did as a
the
kid.
the last thing on that is this in 1983, 90% of the media was owned by 50 different companies. And then in 2011, it became 6 companies owned 90%. So it didn't take that long for that to happen. And I feel like it is kind of a monopoly situation going on, but it's not put off that way. You know, there's still this illusion of choice of many different companies.
Well, you've seen those memes where it's got like 50 newscasters making the chorus of "This is very dangerous of our democracy."
Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest
responsibility
is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and trying to get responsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is very dangerous to our democracy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's a chorus, a script. And it's all, I mean, the same thing. You look at any of these, even Fox is the same as CNN, MSNBC largely. And it's funny because people, you talk like us and people will say, what do you watch, Fox News? I got that the other day too. It was so funny. Like, come up with new debates or arguments if you're still saying that to people.
Yeah.
Unless they really are watching Bill O'Reilly or Handy, whatever. Handy's insanity. But yeah, people would listen to us and say, you guys.
For a while.
Yeah, people would listen to us and say, yeah, these guys are just Fox News watching. But yeah, totally
I do not
contrary.
watch Fox News, just for the record.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, that's what people think, though. No, all of the media is controlled.
Yeah, because you
all of
notice
it is
I did mention Fox News in that top 6. Like you can't listen to, especially if the government is allowed to use propaganda against you. This is for anyone that thinks it's like, to lie to the people or to keep these things secret, so many people would have to be involved. It doesn't take that many, especially with that that executive order or whatever, the NDAA.
The NDAA?
Yeah, the NDAA.
And that's got a lot more than just the propaganda piece to it. That's got all sorts of shit we can go into.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a whole... we could spend hours doing that anyway.
Yeah, maybe later on, but yeah, that's pretty unbelievable. But believable, I mean, seeing today's landscape, I mean, all it is fear, fear, fear. I mean, it's been that way for a long time, but they're kind of just upgrading their tactics and antics now. Like we were saying, everyone's a terrorist now.
Mm-hmm.
Any sort of crisis cannot go to waste. Look up, what's his name? Rahm Emanuel. Yeah, never let a crisis go to waste. But anyway, yeah, should we wrap up on the education then as well? And we pretty much kind of went through all that, I think, pretty well, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's definitely, I want to go more into some of those in the NDAA, the other acts that it refers to.
Oh man, yeah, there's so much in there.
Not right now, but that'll be a much deeper dive on how all of that interconnects.
Right, the surveillance state. It's basically the Patriot Act revamped. Well, and all kinds of other crazy shit with it.
Well, and they actually just did re-up the Patriot Act. They have to do it every so often.
That's right. That is right, yeah. What a bunch of crooks out here, man. But yeah, for some reason people keep voting for these people, keep supporting government. That's our goal here. Is you don't have to anymore. We can really make this a better world ourselves through self-education and voluntarism, understanding our natural law, natural rights.
Yeah, just ask yourself, why do you need someone else to rule you? Why do you need someone else to make your decisions for you? Because that's what the state is. The state is there just to make your decisions, tell you what you can and cannot do. Now, I know the argument of, oh, well, what about the roads or the fire departments or this, that, and the other? The government is not the only way, okay? If you weren't paying 30, 40, 50% of your income in tribute to the rulers, you could do a lot more with it, and maybe you'd have a little bit more time. Maybe you'd have the time to go and fix the pothole in your neighborhood. Maybe you'd have the time to volunteer as a volunteer fire department or fireman at your local. There are private ways to do that. Especially.
Well, yeah, we had all these too before 1913.
What do you think about if as the fire department, right? Shouldn't they only get paid if they stop your house from burning down? Like, thank you for stopping my house. Here is payment. Services rendered.
Perhaps, but I mean, they can also thrive on donations as well.
100%.
To which they do. Yeah, which they do. But
which I guess that would be a thing. If you've got, I don't know what the general radius of a fire department.
But it could be an insurance payment as well. I mean,
insurance companies are a whole nother problem that go along. It's that causes just inflation of costs of a lot of stuff anyway.
Right. But no, I mean, yeah, point being, you don't even need to know the answer. I mean, there's so many ways. Yeah, there's so many ways. I mean, we'd have anti-gravital vehicles by now if not for the government. I mean, we'd be intergalactic without some of these regulations.
Mm-hmm. But if the government is allowed now to lie to you, to use propaganda against you, and what I was saying before about so many people having to keep the secrets, no one in the media actually has to keep the secret, because if the government is now allowed to use propaganda, that means that whatever CIA or FBI or NSA or high up military, whatever informant or whatever is going to the media, that's the only individual that really needs to know that it's not true. Because once they tell it to the people at the media, already. Well, yeah, absolutely. And again, I get this. Like, doesn't mean that even he knows. It could be further up. But as long as, it's a certain point, somebody believes, no, that's the truth, then to them, that's the truth. They think they got the inside scoop, Anderson Cooper hearing from, whomever in the CIA, which, he's in the, well, at least was in the CIA, but that's a whole other.
Trained.
Yeah, also a Vanderbilt. Look that up. Anderson Cooper is a Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Luke Rudkowski, too. We Are Change. Luke Rudkowski.
Yes.
Confronted Anderson Cooper. Yeah, they do excellent work. But yeah, if you question the CIA connection, look up Luke Rudkowski, Anderson Cooper Confronted. I just watched that not too long ago again.
It's a good one.
Which is, that's good. Yeah, he's CIA. And just Operation Mockingbird, too. That's a good one to study as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whole big topic there. But CIA has been infiltrating media for decades now. And just because it happened 50 years ago or so, I mean, imagine how much worse it is now. And just look at the news now. They've been fear-mongering to us and pushing agendas and getting us in lying about war. We know they've been lying about starting wars for years, and yet we still believe them when there's a new agenda. It's just unbelievable. I mean, everyone knows Epstein didn't kill himself, but they just swept that under the rug as well. But we're just back to believing the news whenever there's another big scare, whenever there's another big crisis,
Yeah, and this is a subject for a whole nother show, but there is a modern day book burning going on right now. All right, they are censoring so many truth seekers off of major mainstream social media platforms and media platforms that are supposed to be open source, free, free speech, this, that, and the other, but aren't. And you're not going to hear about it, especially if you don't already subscribe to them. If the algorithms were already trying to make you not find them. But now, not only have people gotten censored off of Facebook and YouTube, but like straight up off of Google entirely, like not able to sign into email accounts to get back into, what could be considered their life's work, and verifiable facts for talking about, things that the CDC have said, referring to articles, just because they are not talking about it in the narrative that is being pushed across, they get censored. So
I know. Yeah, big text.
Search for the truth. It's not going to be given to you. It's not going to be put out on the TV. You're gonna have to look for it.
Like, why would they even need to censor it? Why not? Are people not allowed to have wrong ideas, even if that was, even if they were wrong ideas?
Well, that's the way I look at it. If they're censoring people, that means that they are too close to the truth, because otherwise, why would they care?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they didn't start censoring people until the truth started coming out, in my view. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you can defeat wrong ideas with logic, with argument. You've lost if you need to censor. If they're bad ideas, then you can defeat those with reason and evidence and real logic.
Right. That's it. You need to have discourse. You need to have discussions and arguments and debates to get to the root problems and work through these situations and issues that we have. If you can't talk freely, if you can't work through these issues freely, they're never going to get worked through. It's just going to get worse.
Yeah. And you'll just create more of a sort of black market, but hey, that's where the party's at, I guess.
Yeah, enjoy the decline, I guess.
Yeah, right. But yeah, maybe good place to wrap up there. I think we hit a lot of the education, and yeah, maybe media is one to expand on a lot later.
It's all kind of one thing in the, or I think it kind of leads into it, that like, well, first they get you real young to get you used to the ways of thinking that they want you to think, and then after you're out of there, they just continue to indoctrinate you with this programming, which that's we'll go into that into a media episode on why it's called programming.
Oh yeah, or a tell-lie vision.
Yeah. Oh, and then there are many patents on controlling people's minds through screens, but we'll get into that into another episode.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I think good place there. Did you have any closing thoughts or no?
I think that's a good one. Just again, like always, do your own research. Don't believe anything that you hear without verifying it first. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah.
Question everything. Absolutely. Yes. That's 100%. About all.
Word. Good wrap up then. All right, peoples of the world, enjoy